Hey everyone, welcome back to another range test video here in the 2025.5 refreshed Volvo XC90 T8 plug-in hybrid. Now today I am very interested to see how far this plug-in hybrid Volvo goes, given I have tested two other T8 powered Volvos here on the channel in this exact same range test, but this one is obviously going to be the biggest, the largest, and the heaviest of the bunch, using a very similar, if not identical, powertrain to those other vehicles I have tested. So not only have I just got back from a 700-mile road trip in this Volvo, so I have a ton of experience about how this vehicle drives, I am very curious now about how it drives solely on the electrified powertrain, which of course is very similar to those other vehicles. So under the hood, you're going to find a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder paired to a single but large and powerful electric motor at the rear axles to make this vehicle all-wheel drive, although there's no mechanical connection between the two. So you have the 8-speed automatic paired to the transmission up front and about an 18.8 kilowatt-hour high-voltage battery pack powering the electric motor out back, with about 14.7 kilowatt hours usable according to Volvo. But this entire setup puts out, a substantial amount of power, 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque, which will be good enough to propel the XC90 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, or maybe even just under that if you get everything just right. So this thing is absolutely no slouch, and as you guys know, if you've seen it in my other content, either with the XC60 or the V60 Polestar, I'm a huge fan of the T8 plug-in hybrid for not only that performance that it offers, but just the pure driving experience in only electrified mode, which we're currently in right now. And here we are merging onto a 55-mile-an-hour roadway, and this thing is just effortless, even with a vehicle of this size. It truly is, to me, one of the standout features and reasons you'd want to buy the T8 over the other powertrain options available. Now, if you haven't seen any of my other range test videos here on the channel, then this is going to be a 30-mile loop, which is just under the estimated range according to the vehicle in the dash here for this powertrain. But the 30-mile loop essentially contains about, I would say 30 to 40% 55, 60 mile an hour roadways. You have another 30 to 40% that is strictly over 70 miles an hour out on the interstate. And then another portion of, 20 to 30% is going to be lower speeds, 45 miles an hour or less. There's even a couple residential components to it. So this is a good mix or variety of conditions that I think simulates a average commute, at least here in a suburban type of environment, assuming you have approximately a 30-mile commute either one way or both ways. And then if we do complete the entire loop without using up all the driving range on the battery, we will go ahead and restart the loop and just continue on a second path of travel. But assuming we make it to the interstate portion, we will deviate at that point and then continue on the 55-mile-an-hour road and give it its best opportunity to get all of the range possible out of the system. So here we are about 3 miles in thus far, and it's saying 31 miles of range left. We started out at 34 miles of estimated range, which is actually just a tick higher than this vehicle is actually rated at from the factory. And I don't want to give any spoilers away here at the beginning of this video, but if you've seen any of my other Volvo T8 range tests, as I mentioned, they performed very, very well. But just in case you guys are not going to check that out or haven't checked out my road trip review video going over fuel economy and whatnot, this vehicle did pretty darn good. Now, this one is a fully loaded Ultra model with the Bowers & Wilkins, the active chassis. It has the lounge package. It might have just about every package you can get on this refresh XC90, which pushes the MSRP as tested to just under $90,000. I think it's right at $89,000 tested. For this price point in the dollar, I have to say, I don't think it's quite as quiet on the interior as I ultimately would have wished for a vehicle like this. But with that Bowers & Wilkins, or even maybe the standard Harman Kardon with the Ultra, either audio system is going to, get plenty loud and have plenty of power behind it to drown out any external noises. But at speeds of over 75 miles an hour out of the interstate, I even hit a severe storm driving back on Interstate 80, and this thing absolutely felt like a tank behind the wheel, going into winds that were, 40, 50 mile an hour gusts at times, rain, lightning, the whole 9 yards. This thing handled it easy, and I had zero confidence issues whatsoever. And this vehicle handles, with the active suspension, the air suspension, and the fairly wide all-season tires, it actually feels pretty nimble behind the wheel, and generally I think it drives a little bit smaller than one would actually think a vehicle of this size and weight would drive. So we're not using quite 100% throttle there just to get up to speed, but we're using a solid 90% or so. And we're gonna pass this car. Oh, they're gonna merge in front of me. And I will say, immediately upon first impression on the interstate here, just because this vehicle's bigger, doesn't have the aerodynamics, it's just a heavier vehicle. The T8 doesn't feel quite as excessive in terms of its available power on tap, but it's certainly still way better than some other plug-in hybrids I've tested on the channel, because you can simply, you have enough power to do any sort of passing that you would wish with ease in this vehicle. So we're going to set the cruise control here at 70. Of course, it has the pilot, so you can use the adaptive cruise, the lane centering, which all is enabled via one press of a button right there. It is a calm day outside today, or just about a 5 mile an hour east wind at most. So this is nearly a perfect weather condition day to test a vehicle like this on this route, because there's really not going to be any major impact in terms of wind. Truly is a very nice day to be out. The only thing that's bad about today is we are still getting Canadian wildfire smoke down here in western Illinois, which you can see by the amount of haze going across the Mississippi River here. It's not that pleasant to be outside. It's not so bad. I think we're in the yellow category just before the orange, so it's really not too dangerous to health conditions, but I will say just a little bit amount of smoke in the air, you can really start to smell it, and it just makes the experience being outside for more than a little while less than ideal. But this vehicle does have an air quality monitor, which we can pull up here on the infotainment system. You can see it says PM 2.5, which is one of the components that they measure air quality in. But so far, everything is going great in this test. You can see we really haven't had any impacts in terms of traffic. We are coming up on 25 miles of range, and we've traveled 9.1 miles thus far, right at 75% battery capacity. There's a Telluride pretty much maxing out its towing, I would assume. But one of the other components I really used on that road trip was the massaging front seats, which this one comes with. And it's not a massage on the lower bottom cushion, but it is a massage on the back portion. And I have to say, it's one of the best massaging functions that I've used in any sort of luxury vehicle, at least on the back portion, because it kind of comes out and protrudes a little bit farther than some other vehicles, and it's a little bit more aggressive or intense than other vehicles in that it kind of pushes on your muscles a little bit more. So just coming off of the interstate here, we are at 22 miles of estimated range left and 12 miles traveled. So we're doing pretty good, as you can see, basically pacing exactly what the computer was saying as we left the house. Now, I like one of the attributes about Volvo vehicles in the pure drive mode is that it prioritizes coasting more than that of regen. I truly think this is the way to get the best efficiency out of any plug-in hybrid, is to really prioritize coasting than regen, because regen, or transferring energy from the electric motor back into the battery pack, does have some inherent losses with the vehicles. Now, of course, when you step on the brake and start to slow down, it will use regen, because obviously it wants to capture any energy that it can, rather than using the friction brakes and have it all go to heat. One thing I will say after spending some time with this vehicle is that I see a lot of other XC90s on the road. So it is a very popular vehicle, even here in really the heart of the Midwest is what I would consider this area. And it is a suburban area. There is some, people that do have some wealth around this vicinity, but Even outside of that, maybe it's just because we do have a local Volvo dealership that these vehicles are present. But you know, of course, last week I had a Genesis product, and I see, you know, several Genesis vehicles in this area despite not having a Genesis dealer. So Volvo has certainly taken some sort of market share or recognition in this area. Okay, so we're currently at the halfway point of this test. So we've traveled 14.7 miles, and it says we have 20 miles left on the trip computer here. So we are pacing exactly or just a hair over what it ultimately said that we're gonna have for the range of this vehicle, you know, after leaving the house. Now, I will say we are still over 50% of the state of charge on the battery by a decent margin. So there is gonna be a little bit of a headroom here, I think. So I will update you guys once we make the full loop, assuming that we will make the full loop, which I don't see why not at this point, and start on our second loop just to see how far this vehicle goes. But I think so far so good. And one of the things I always harp on plug-in hybrids, if you really plan to use it on a commuting daily basis, which you really should if you're paying the additional charge for a plug-in hybrid, is the merging or power on tap, which I covered a little bit earlier in this video. But getting back onto the interstate right there, of course, that is kind of a long sweeping on-ramp, so it's not so much of an issue. But if you have, say, a clover leaf type of interchange that you're needing to merge onto on a frequent basis, you want to make sure the plug-in hybrid that you're purchasing ultimately has the power, to me, in the EV only mode to do that efficiently and effectively and not cause a safety issue. So we just ended up passing the halfway point, got back with 29.6 miles traveled with 6 miles left on the trip computer. And we're over 30 miles thus far, still with those same 6 miles left. So we're pacing about 35 miles traveled, but we'll have to see ultimately what happens here. So far, everything is going great, and I don't really think there's anything to scoff at the end of the day. If we end up with around that 35-mile mark, that is, I think, pretty darn competitive for a vehicle in this class and segment. Now, of course, there probably are going to be ones that can travel maybe just a tad farther, but actually, I don't know that for a fact. I think a lot of them are ultimately going to be in that 25 to 35-mile area, depending on, you know, how you drive the vehicle. Now, my real only complaint that I have to say about this vehicle in terms of how it drives is at times the ride quality is a little unsettled over particularly harsh bumps due to like the smaller, you know, 21-inch wheel with the smaller sidewall tire. Some of that might also have to do with the air suspension and the, you know, adaptive nature that this one is equipped with as an additional charge. If you don't want that, you don't have to get it. You can just stick with the standard suspension, which I'm sure rides very nicely in a vehicle like this as well. Okay, so you joined me a couple minutes later, and we are still having enough charge that we are going to continue straight past the on-ramp for the interstate portion of my first loop and just continue on this 55-mile-an-hour road. Again, that's just the route that I've taken on all vehicles that have made it past this point in the second loop. And we are already passing 35 miles on the trip information. This is one of those things, like I said, for whatever reason, the Volvo at the bottom of the pack seems to like slow down its energy burn just a little bit to eke out even more range out of the exact same amount of energy, which is cool to see. Okay, it's officially reading 0 miles, so we're at any second here it's going to switch over. This is darn impressive, actually. This is not at all how far I was expecting to travel on this thing. Going uphill, once again, be as gentle as possible. There it goes. 38.8 is the final result here. So there we have it, 38.8 miles traveled on, like I said, the 14.7 kilowatt hours that Volvo states is usable out of this high voltage battery pack. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if this vehicle tries to eat into that buffer of roughly 4 kilowatt hours just a little bit to eke out a little bit more range, because ultimately we beat it and surpassed it in all of my vehicles, all of my Volvo vehicles I've tested on the channel by quite a bit. But that is nothing to scoff at. I'll go ahead and catch up with you guys in just a second so we go over the efficiency numbers and everything for that actual distance on electricity and to wrap up this video. But ultimately, another fantastic showing by the Volvo T8 plug-in hybrid on the channel, and I continue to be blown away every time I get one of these vehicles, because really the driving dynamics and how they drive on using only the electricity and the electric motor is just great to live with on a daily basis. So as you saw, 38.8 miles traveled on the 14.9 kilowatt hour usable capacity of the high voltage battery, which nets us a 2.60 miles per kilowatt hour, which, believe it or not, I actually look back with the XC60 where I only got 0.8 miles farther on that vehicle, which was 2.65 miles per kilowatt hour. So between the XC60 and the XC90, there really wasn't all that much difference, well within the range of ambient conditions impacting the efficiency of either vehicle to be slightly better or worse between the two. Now, when we compare to the V60 Polestar with, again, the exact same powertrain, that vehicle traveled 44 miles and a 3.22 mile per kilowatt hour efficiency, which was substantially higher than either of the other two SUVs. So if you're comparing the wagon to the SUVs, there's going to be a big difference there. But if you're comparing the XC60 to the XC90, really, I didn't see all that much difference in terms of total range or total efficiency. But outside of that, pretty darn impressive results for a mid-size, larger SUV that weighs as much as it does here on my range test loop. And certainly, again, near the top of the pack in terms of all of the plug-in hybrids that I've ever tested. I think all three of the Volvos have gone the furthest on the exact same amount of high voltage battery capacity and using the same powertrain. So really very impressive results, not gonna lie there. But outside of that, the XC90, you'll just have to check out my other driving review video on it, is a good vehicle. It's a solid vehicle, but I think it comes in very pricey for what it has to offer in terms of its features, options, and overall luxurious feel behind the wheel, as really seat comfort and luxurious amenities, mainly for the second row, really wasn't all that impressive, maybe not even class competitive for this vehicle's nearly $89,000 price point as tested. So I think I'm basically going to leave it at that. You're certainly sacrificing some items with the XC90 to get this T8 powertrain at a higher price point in this segment. So value proposition might not be all that strong in the grand scheme of things, but what is strong is the plug-in hybrid powertrain and its all-electric range. We actually had a chance to do another range test inadvertently on that trip, where it was almost entirely 70-mile-an-hour driving. There was about 3 or 4 miles getting to the interstate from my house, but after that, the vehicle did 28.8 miles out on the interstate with that 3 to 4 mile slower speed section prior to the interstate. So that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. I want to give a huge thanks to Volvo for sending the XC60 out for me to test and review. Did over 1,000 miles behind the wheel on this vehicle between my trip to Detroit and back, another trip I did up to the Chicago suburbs and back, and of course the range test. All of that stuff will have content posted over the coming days, so make sure you guys check that out. Hit that like button if you guys enjoyed this video and or found it helpful. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and as usual, with all that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.